Hello, this is BK. Welcome to CocoZini DIY YouTube channel. Today's video is on this beautiful dress. It's a knit dress, and the video is going to be divided into two. First, we're going to make a pattern for the dress, and the second part is going to be us putting the dress together. This pattern could also be used for a woven cotton fabric. So let's get started. If you're new to this channel, you're welcome. Don't forget to subscribe and also hit the notification bell to get updates on new uploads from me. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you for sharing my videos. Here are the measurements and the sewing materials you're going to need. Grab a paper, or you can just use a wrapping paper or join some printing papers together. Draw a horizontal line and a vertical line, like I have done here on my paper. Then I'm going to use the measurement of how long I want my dress to be. The dress I'm wearing right now is 33 inches long, so I'm going to add 1 inch hem and ½ inch seam for the top part of the dress. Then I'm going to mark it. So that's my 33 inches long. Then I'm going to mark 1½ inch, which is the hem and the seam allowance. I'm going to measure from my shoulder to waist, and I'm going to mark the measurement on that long line. Mine is 17. So I'm going to mark it right there. Make sure you use your measurement. Then I'm going to also go ahead and measure my shoulder to hips. Mine is 24. I'm marking it down on that long line. Make sure you use your measurements. Then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to draw a line on those marks. Oops. There you go. That is on my waist line. And I'm going to do another line on my hips line. When you're done, measure your shoulder to shoulder divided by 2. Mine is 15. Divided by 2 is 7½. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mark it on that line right there. So make sure you use your own measurement. Then we're going to measure our neck. So the depth of the neck is 4 inches. So I'm going to mark 4 inches on that long line. Then I'm going to mark 5 inches on the shoulder line over there, like that. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to connect the neck. It's a boat neck. So when you're done, on that shoulder line mark, I'm going to use the measurement of my armhole measurement divided by 2. Mine is 18, divided by 2 is 9. So I'm going to measure 9, and I've marked it right there. So I'm just going to use my ruler to draw a line coming from that long line that we have, which is the center front. I'm going to square it out like that. Also, I'm just going to connect that line from the shoulder line. And I'm just going to join it like that. Okay, so to allow for the dolman sleeve, because my sleeve is a dolman sleeve and it needs to be eased, to have ease on there, I'm going to drop that line with 2 inches. So I'm marking 2 inches down from that line, and this is going to be the new bust line. So I'm just squaring it out and drawing a line on there. So on that new bust line, I'm going to use the measurement of my bust divided by 4. So I'm just kind of extending that long line. So right now I'm going to add the measurement of my bust divided by 4. My bust is 40 divided by 4 is 10, so I'm marking 10 right there. I'm going to add 1 inch seam allowance. I'm going to add that right there. Then I'm just going to add half an inch ease. This is a knit material. We don't need much ease because it stretches. So we're going to need our hip measurement here. We don't need the waist measurement because we don't need the waist measurement for this dress. It's a straight dress. So my hips measurement is 44 divided by 4 is 11. Then I'm going to add 1 inch seam allowance and I'm going to add half an inch ease onto my hip line. Then I'm going to just grab my ruler and I will connect that line. So I'm connecting my hip line to my bust line, like I'm doing right here. Then we're just going to connect the hip to the hemline. So that is how long I want my dress to be. I'm going to draw a line on that hem line, also on how long I want my dress to be. So I'm going to connect the hip line to that hem line, but I'm going to slant my ruler like a quarter of an inch on the hem line, and I will just connect the two like that. We're moving to the sleeves, which is a Dolman sleeve. You have to be very attentive because it's a little bit tricky. So starting from your shoulder, you're going to measure how much you want your sleeve, how long you want your sleeve to be. Mine is 17. So I'm going to measure 17 from the shoulder mark. Then I'm going to mark 17 inches right there, plus 1 inch seam allowance, making 18. Then I'm just going to make sure I'll just draw that line or extend that line all the way down to that 18 inches length. Okay? We're going to measure down 5 inches from that shoulder line. I'm going to mark it right there. Starting from the neckline, you're going to measure from the neck to the hem of the sleeve. Mine, I'm going to move it a little bit so we can see what I'm talking about. So that's the neck all the way to the end of the sleeves. So you're going to measure it out. And my measurement is 20.5 inches. So what we're going to do is whatever measurement you get, we're going to transfer it on that 5-inch mark that we marked earlier. So mine ended there, just quite a little bit before. It's right there. So that's where my the measurement is going to kind of end when I rule the line. So I made a mistake here when I was drawing the line. I'm supposed to start drawing the line from the neckline, but I started here on the shoulder line, which is wrong. But I corrected it before I cut the fabric, which I'm going to show you later in the video. So please make sure you start your line from the neck line and not the shoulder line. Grab your tape measurement, measure around your wrist or where you want your sleeves to end. Mine is 9, divided by 2 is 4.5. Then I'm going to add half an inch seam. So I'm marking it right there at the end of my sleeve. So I'm just going to connect it from the hamhole area. Like that. So that's the sleeves. So what we're going to do next is right on the side seam, we're going to measure down 2 inches or 3, depending on what you want, but I'm measuring 2. So I'm going to mark out 2 inches on that side seam. Then I'm just going to use a curve ruler or just curve it and connect it to the sleeve. And that is our dolman sleeves. So all you just have to do now is just join the sleeve at the hem. We're going to use the pattern to cut the back and the front. But before we cut the back, we're going to adjust the neck. So that's the front. And for the back bodice, the depth is 2 inches. So I'm going to measure 2 inches from there, and I will mark it. And I will just use the curve ruler to just join the curve of the back neck. And that's it. So go ahead and cut 1 piece for the back, 1 piece for the front, and make sure you have it, when you're cutting out the fabric, make sure you have it on fold. Here is what I was explaining to you earlier in the video, that I mistakenly mark it starting from the shoulder line instead of the neckline. So I readjusted it here, I remarked it on the neckline, then cut out the excess. So please make sure you do that before you start cutting your fabric. I have cut out the back and the front of the knit fabric. So that's the front and that's the back. So now we have to start joining them together. So I'm going to open it up with right side facing each other. That's the right side of the fabric. And I'm going to place the right side of the back fabric on top of it, right side facing each other. Then we're going to join the shoulder to this, together, the back and the front on the sleeves together like that. Make sure you align the lines, if you have lines on your fabric like mine, with 1/2 inch seam allowance. It took me a while to join my fabric together because of the lines, but hey, I got it done. I'm done stitching the sleeve. I have finished the edges here, and I also stitch it with 1/2 inch seam allowance, and that is the other side of it too. What we're going to do next is that we are going to join the side seam. So I will align the fabric together, then we're going to sew it with 1 inch seam allowance all the way down, starting from the sleeve. I'm done sewing it here, and that's what it looks like. I also finished the edges with the serger. And that is what it looks like. What we're going to do next is we are going to sew the hem of the dress. I finished the edges of the hem, so I'm going to fold it in with 1 inch seam allowance. Then I'm going to go ahead and sew it with 1 inch seam allowance all the way around. Then we're going to do the same thing with this sleeve hem too. I've finished the edges for the sleeve hem too, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it in that way, 1 inch seam allowance, and I will go ahead and stitch it down. I'm done with the hem, and here is what it looks like. I have stitched it with 1 inch seam allowance. I have also gone ahead and I did the sleeves too. the hem of the sleeve with 1-inch seam allowance with the finish edges. So we're going to move to the neck. And for us to do the neck, here is what you have to do. If you have a curve tape, you can use it for this part, or you can just use the normal tape that you have. So you're just going to measure starting from the seam to the end of the seam. So that is the back one. Then we're going to measure the front too. And whatever you get, you add it together. So from my back, I got 10, and from the front, I got 12. So that's 22. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the neck band for 22. So when I'm cutting it, that's the stretchy back and that is the non-stretchy part. So I cut it from the non-stretchy part. So I cut 22 inches long by 2 inches wide. So we're going to go ahead and join it together with 1/4 inch seam allowance. I am done joining it. So I'm going to open up the seam. Then I'm going to fold it down like that with the right side out that way. And I'm going to attach it to the neck. Okay, so before we attach it, here is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put some notches on it. So I'm going to notch that side, one end of it. I'm going to notch the other end of it. Then I'm going to fold it into 4 like that. Then I'm going to also notch the middle part of it. Okay, so the seam area of the band is what it's going to be our back, center back. So I'm going to attach it to my center back. And remember, we're putting the band inside the bodice. You see what I'm doing right now? So right side are facing each other. So I've attached with that seam, with the notch I have, I attach it to the back. The next notch, I'm going to attach it to the shoulder seam right there. Then I'm going to attach the other notch to the other shoulder seam right there. Okay, then the last notch, which is in the middle, I'm going to attach it to the center front. And make sure that the band is inside the bodice. So the band is a little bit shorter than the neck, a couple of an inch shorter than the neck. So when you're putting it together, make sure you're pulling like that and attaching it to the neck of the bodice. So just pull it a little bit and attach it. It's a knit fabric, so you go ahead and do that. When you're done pinning, then go ahead and stitch it with 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm done stitching it together, and here is what it looks like. I've added the neck band, and I've also finished the edges of it. All the way around. Okay. What I'm going to do next is that on the right side of that neck band, right side right there, we're going to stitch on the seam hole right there. So we have to make sure that the seam is facing down, facing the bodice. Then we're going to stitch on top of the seam hole. While we're stitching it, we make sure it's catching the seam at the back. I am done doing that. See, the seam is all stayed and secured. So that's pretty much the end of the dress. So if you have any question, please comment down below. If you're new to my channel, thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button. If you're a returning subscriber, thanks for stopping here. Don't forget to share the video with your friends. And until the next video, stay blessed and God bless you. Bye.